Chicago held its breath under a curtain of winter haze. Far below the river caught the city lights and chopped them into broken ribbons of color. Far above St. Augustine Medical Center rose from the riverfront in glass and steel 60 floors of polished transparency that promised modern miracles. On the top floor, miracles were in short supply. Inside the VIP suite, the air felt too thin. Machines crowded the walls, screens glowed in blues and greens, wires and tubes crawled over the bed like vines. 30 people in white coats and scrubs moved in tight, frantic circles around one man. Victor Hale lay in the center of it all. He had the kind of face that had probably once filled magazine covers and boardroom portraits. Strong jaw, neat gray hair, the faint shadow of a tan that did not belong to hospital light. Tonight his skin was the wrong color, an ugly slate gray, with a yellow tint around his eyes. His chest rose and fell in ragged, uneven pulls. Every breath sounded like old machinery grinding through rust. The heart monitor above his head stuttered with irregular beeps. Too fast. Too shallow. Someone cursed under their breath. Fear had a sound tonight. It was the hitch in a specialist's voice, the slight crack in a surgeon's order. "He is crashing," one cardiologist snapped, leaning over the bed. "Liver enzymes are off the charts. We need to prep him for emergency transfer." To where another doctor shot back. "He already owns the building." Charts passed from hand to hand. Fingers smudged ink and crinkled corners. Orders collided. A tall, exhausted pulmonologist snatched a tablet from a colleague. "He is septic," he insisted. "Look at his white count. Look at his temp. He needs a ventilator before he codes." "We intubate with his pressure like that, we lose him on the table," someone else argued. Voices climbed on top of one another until it was just noise. Nothing coherent, nothing useful. At the foot of the bed, one person did not contribute to the chaos. Evelyn Hale watched her husband with eyes that did not blink enough. The overhead light picked diamonds from her ears and throat. A silk blouse flowed over a pencil skirt, the kind of outfit more at home in a penthouse than a hospital. In her right hand, she held a cut crystal glass of untouched water. Her thumb kept brushing the rim, making the softest chime when it tapped the glass. A delicate, almost musical sound. Chime, beep, beep. The two sounds twined together and filled the room. Her perfume drifted out in warm waves. Something floral, expensive, with a sharp metallic edge that did not belong in a sick room. She dabbed at the corner of one eye with a white monogrammed handkerchief. The mascara did not smudge. "Just help him," she whispered, barely loud enough to hear. "Whatever it costs. You all work for him." It was not a plea, it was a reminder. A senior nurse lifted her head. "Somebody call Lang," she barked. "All of this is going in the chief's report." No one noticed the soft squeak of wheels behind them. In the doorway, a linen cart nudged forward, guided by a pair of slim hands in pale blue gloves. Mara Cole angled the cart to the side, trying to leave as much space as possible in the congested room. Her scrub top hung loose on a frame that had more strength in it than it looked. Dark brown hair was braided tight and tucked away, no loose strands, no jewelry, nothing for a patient to grab. She paused just inside, waiting for someone to tell her where to put the supplies. Nobody did. The sound of the room hit her all at once. Beeping monitors, fast footsteps, sterile wrappers tearing, oxygen hissing, the slapped wet sound of a stethoscope being pulled free from skin, the murmur under it all like a hive. "Who brought that in?" A nurse snapped, pointing at the cart. "We are not running a hotel service up here." Mara shifted her weight. "Stock rotation for the VIP floor," she said. Her voice carried, but she kept it low. "I was paged." "Then stock and move. Do not get in the way." Mara nodded. The words slid past her like wind. She had heard versions of the same line every night shift for 7 months. She pushed the cart toward the cabinets by the wall. Her shoes moved soundless on the polished floor. The glass wall beyond the bed reflected the whole scene back at her in a distorted, curved way. Doctors bent over Victor in double. Monitors flashed twice. Evelyn's reflection looked even whiter and more distant in the glass. Mara did not look at herself. She pulled open the cabinet door, counted gauze packs by touch. Her hands remembered the rhythm. 3 stacks, 4 deep labels facing out. It left her eyes free to move. She let them. They passed over the bed just long enough to take in the essentials. Skin tone, chest rise, the pattern of sweat on his hairline, the angle of his neck, the shape of his pupils under drooping lids, the tremor at the corner of his mouth that did not match the sedation level. Her gaze slid to the monitor. Numbers blinked in friendly green. Heart rate 118, blood pressure 100 beats over 84, oxygen saturation 99, respiration 20. Good numbers. Textbook numbers, the kind of numbers a nurse was supposed to be happy with. She set a stack of gauze down. The edge of the package crinkled in her hand. On the far side of the bed, a resident adjusted the IV drip. Lines hung from a rack, clear bags catching the ceiling glare. The adhesive holding the primary line to Victor's forearm had been changed recently. The edges were still clean, no peeling. As Mara watched, the ventilator alarm chirped. The respiratory therapist ignored it, busy arguing with a surgeon about intubation. Someone silenced the alarm with a quick, impatient jab. The room went back to its previous noise. Mara closed the cabinet. Her hand stayed on the handle a heartbeat longer than it needed to. In the field, good numbers had meant nothing until you touched the patient. She crossed the floor with 3 measured steps, keeping herself in the gaps between bodies using angles, not force. No one looked down. No one told her to move. She reached the foot of the bed and pretended to straighten the stack of clean sheets on the lower rail. From there she could see the full length of Victor Hale's body. The sheets were pulled smooth. Too smooth. Even with the tremor in his chest, the fabric did not shift the way it should. His feet were pale, the veins on top standing out like blue threads under wax. His toes had a faint yellow hue at the nails, almost stained. Her gaze climbed. His hands lay on the blankets, palms down. The nails were worse there. Yellowed, almost bruised looking at the base, with a thin metallic sheen in the cuticles that caught the light. Her nose picked up on it before her eyes understood. That sour metal tang beneath the antiseptic and perfume, a scent she had not smelled since a summer night in another country where the dust tasted like copper. Mara's chest tightened. She lifted her eyes back to the glowing monitor. Heart rate 118, pressure 136/84, oxygen 99. Then she looked back down at Victor. The picture did not match. A cold line drew itself between her shoulder blades. It felt like someone had opened a window behind her, but the glass walls were sealed. The room was warm. The back of her neck prickled anyway. She did not say anything at first. Old habits told her to wait to check again to confirm. Her thumb ran along the edge of the sheet, feeling the weave of the cotton, the small tremors in her own fingertips. The monitor beeped on steady and bright. For a moment, Mara listened only to that sound and to the quieter, irregular struggle of the man on the bed. 2 different rhythms layered on top of each other, just slightly out of sync. The difference lodged in her mind like a splinter. Something was wrong. She knew it before she knew how to name it. Mara slid her hand away from the sheet and forced herself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. It took the edge off the chill running along her spine, but it did not erase it. A resident brushed past her shoulders, tight eyes glued to a tablet. Out of the way, he muttered, not really seeing her. She stepped aside, letting him crowd closer to the head of the bed. From this angle, she could see the chart clipped to the footrail. Thick paper, multiple pages. Her fingers twitched toward it without thinking. Old muscle memory. She reached for the chart as if to straighten it, thumb catching the top edge. No one stopped her. No one was looking at the foot of the bed. All eyes were fixed on the glowing screens and the man whose fortune had built them. The chart was heavier than it looked. Lab reports were stacked beneath the progress notes, all of them printed. The hospital logo sat neat and blue at the top of each page. There was something off there, too. She flipped to the latest labs. Liver enzymes, kidney function electrolytes, blood counts. Numbers marched down the page in tight, small font. Her mind ran through them out of habit. Ast alt creatinine bun lactate. The pattern did not feel like a pattern, it felt like a patchwork. The white count was high enough to suggest overwhelming infection. The liver enzymes were jagged up and down in a way that did not match the steady decline in his color. The kidney number said he should have been swollen fluid overloaded. He was not. His arms and legs looked almost thinner than they should, the skin loose on the bone. There were no electronic signatures at the bottom of the printouts, no timestamp stamped by the lab system, only ink names written in pen. Mara lifted the top page just enough to see the underside of the one beneath. The reference ranges were smudged. Someone had printed these, not pulled them from a live terminal. A small thing, the sort of shortcut a busy team might take. Or the sort of thing someone might doctor. A flash of memory cut through the hum of the room. Not this room. Another one. A tent that smelled like dust and bleach and fear. A cot with a soldier on it, lips cracked skin, dry eyes glassy. A captain standing at the edge of the bed arguing with a medic about food poisoning. In that tent, the numbers had looked like infection too. The printouts had said diarrhea, dehydration, a bad batch of rations. The nails of the soldiers' hands had said something else, so had the smell in the air. Mara blinked the 10 away and focused on the pages in her hand. Someone bumped her shoulder. The chart jerked. A nurse with a frazzled bun hissed. "Cole, we are not doing paperwork. Put that down and stock the crash cart." Mara kept her voice level. "These labs are printed," she said, "not from the system." The nurse rolled her eyes. "Congratulations, you can read." Mara looked back at Victor, then at the monitor, then at the labs. Her throat felt tight. "They are wrong," she said quietly. She had not meant to say it out loud. The words slipped out before she could catch them. They were not loud. They did not need to be. The room heard them anyway. Conversations stuttered. Not stopped completely, but faltered around the edges. A few heads turned her way. The cardiologist nearest the bed glanced down, as if just noticing there was a nurse at the footrail. "What did you say?" he asked. Mara held the chart with both hands now. Her palms were slightly damp on the cardboard backing. "These labs," she said. "They do not belong to him. They do not match his presentation." The pulmonologist frowned. "You a resident?" he asked. "Night nurse," the frazzled nurse snapped before Mara could answer. "Float support. 7 months in. She is here to stock linens." The label landed between them and hung there. A man in a deep blue suit at the wall, who had been silent until now, shifted. "Hospital administration. Probably." His badge caught the light. His eyes went from Mara to the chart and back, weighing something that was not about medicine. The cardiologist blew out a breath. "We are not debating lab integrity with a float nurse," he said briskly. "Page pathology if you have an issue with the numbers. Right now I have a billionaire in septic shock." Mara could have left it there. She should have. That would have been the safe move. Her gaze dropped again to Victor's hands, the yellow at the base of the nails, the faint metallic sheen, the tiny tremor in his fingers that did not match sedatives or fever or anything she had seen in a normal ICU run. The memory of that tent came back sharper this time, the taste of dust in her mouth, the grit on her teeth, the way her gloves had looked when she peeled them off after trying to flesh something she had not been allowed to name out of a dying man's veins. Her heart picked up speed. She felt it in her ears. "They are not septic labs," she said. "They have septic numbers, but not in the right places. The trend is wrong. The organ pattern is wrong. The vitals do not line up." The room went a little quieter. "Cole," the frazzled nurse warned. One of the younger residents smirked. "You read a few values and suddenly you are smarter than the machines," he said. "Cute." Mara ignored him. She spoke to the cardiologist instead, and to the room and to herself. "The sodium is too stable for what you are saying. The creatinine jumped in a way kidneys do not jump. The liver looks like 4 different patients stapled together on paper." She swallowed. "And the labs are all printed. They could be altered." It was not quite an accusation. Not yet. It still sounded like doubt, but it carried enough weight. On the other side of the bed, Evelyn Hale turned her head slowly. Her gaze moved over the crowd until it found Mara. Dark eyes rimmed in just enough liner to sharpen them pinned the younger woman where she stood. For a heartbeat, the two of them were the only people in the room who were not moving. Mara felt it, the focus, the measure. Evelyn took a small step closer to the bed, putting one manicured hand on the rail. Her rings clicked softly against metal. The crystal glass in her other hand chimed again, almost playful. "I am sorry," she said, her voice smooth, pleasant. "What did you say your name was?" The question was so gentle that it took a second to realize everyone had heard it. Mara forced her fingers to relax on the chart. She set it back in the clip, then straightened. "Mara," she said. "Mara Cole." Evelyn nodded as if she were filing the name away someplace important. "Ms. Cole," she said, tasting the syllables. "You have concerns about my husband's care." It was not phrased as a question. The doctor shifted, suddenly aware of hierarchy that had nothing to do with medicine. Mara chose her words carefully. "I have concerns about the data," she said. "His body and his labs are telling 2 different stories." The slight lift at the corner of Evelyn's mouth did not reach her eyes. "And you, with 7 months here, are certain you see something. All these specialists do not." The cardiologist made a small, unhappy sound. "Mrs. Hale, these are routine disagreements. We are just refining our picture of what is happening." Evelyn did not look away from Mara. "I asked her," she said. The room stilled again. Mara could feel her own pulse in her throat. She knew what she should say. She should back down. She should apologize or retreat into the safety of her role. The smell of metal on Victor's breath rose again in her memory, thicker now. The sting of chemical air inside a tent on the other side of the world, layered with the sterile chill of this glass tower. "I am certain something is wrong," she said. "I have seen falsified labs before." The words were out. There was no taking them back. The resident who had smirked before let out a short laugh. "She has seen falsified labs," he repeated. "Lang is going to love that one." Evelyn's expression did not change. If anything, her voice grew softer. "You have quite an imagination, Ms. Cole." She took a small step closer to Mara now, close enough that Mara could smell the perfume more clearly. It was expensive high floral notes on top, a bitter metal underneath. "If you like this job," Evelyn murmured low enough that the nearest doctors had to lean in to catch it, "you did not see anything tonight. You stocked supplies. You went home. That is all." Mara held her gaze. For a split second, she saw something under the diamond shine and careful hair. Not panic, not grief. A kind of cold patience. The quiet of a person used to getting exactly what she wanted. The cardiologist clapped his hands once sharp. Enough, he said. We are wasting time. Nurse out. Someone get me updated vitals. The spell broke. People moved again. The noise rushed back. Mara stepped away from the bed rail. Her hands felt empty without the chart in them. She wrapped her fingers around the handle of the linen cart instead. The monitor above Victor's head beeped on steady, cheerful telling a story she did not believe. She turned the cart toward the door, but she did not let herself look away from the bed until the last possible second. Victor's chest hitched once a small, uneven rise that did not line up with the clean numbers on the screen. The mismatch stayed with her as she pushed the cart out into the hall, lodged behind her ribs like a stone. The hallway outside the VIP suite was too bright. Light bounced off the glass walls and polished floors until it felt like standing inside a reflection instead of a real place. Mara pushed the linen cart into the nearest alcove and let it roll to a stop. For a moment she just stood there, hands on the handle, heart beating harder than the short walk deserved. Nurses rushed past, shoes squeaking, badges swinging. A portable monitor beeped as it wheeled by on the way to some other crisis. Down the corridor, an orderly laughed too loudly at something on his phone, the sound jarring and out of place. None of it touched the quiet knot forming in the center of her chest. She turned her head just enough to see the frosted glass of the VIP suite door. The letters on the sign read, Private Care Floor, 60 Hale. Their gold edges caught the light. Behind that glass, the numbers on a screen said one thing. The man on the bed had said another with his skin and his breath and his nails. Her jaw tightened. Hey, a voice came from her right. You look like you saw a ghost. Mara blinked and focused. One of the residents, not the smirking one from inside, had stopped at the alcove. He was in his early 30s, dark hair escaping the edges of his disposable cap stethoscope looped carelessly around his neck. His badge read, Arun Shah, MD Internal Medicine. He had been in the room a minute ago, she realized, but he had not spoken. He had been the one staring hardest at the labs. Now he watched her. You all right? He asked. Mara straightened a little one hand, unconsciously smoothing the front of her scrub top. Fine, she said, just in the way. His mouth quirked. Everyone is in the way up there, he said. There are more diplomas than good ideas in that room. The attempt at humor did not quite land. Exhaustion dragged at the corners of his eyes. Mara hesitated. She knew better than to overshare with people in white coats. She had learned quickly how fast a reputation formed in a hospital, how small details grew teeth. But he was still looking at her as if he actually wanted an answer. The knot in her chest tightened another turn. The labs are wrong, she said. Shaw glanced toward the suite door. You sounded pretty sure about that inside. They do not match him, Mara said. If he were as septic as those numbers say, his blood pressure would have tanked long ago. His sodium would be a mess. His kidneys would not jump like that. She heard her own voice, heard how close it was to a challenge, and forced it lower. He smells like a toxin, she added. Not infection, not alcohol, something else. Shaw frowned, not dismissive, thoughtful. You from ICU, he asked. No, she said. Float nights. Before that? She hesitated again. Her personnel file said nothing about the sand or the tents or the way the sky looked when mortar shells traced lines across it. Officially, she had been a course man discharged, retrained, hired fresh. That was all. Military medicine, she said finally. Combat support. His eyes sharpened a little. Afghanistan. She nodded once. He thought about that, then rubbed a hand over his jaw. The Hale case is complicated, he said. We do not know the whole picture yet. You will not find it in those labs, Mara said. He made a small sound in his throat. Pathology signed off, he replied. There are triple checks on high-profile patients. Blood goes straight to a secure line. The words were correct. The system was supposed to work that way. She knew the script. She had heard it before from other mouths about other secure lines. She thought of the printed pages, the ink signatures, the way the numbers had looked, not like a disease, but like a story trying too hard to be told. Printed results are easier to change, she said quietly. Shaw looked at her for another long second, then glanced down the hall again as if he could feel the pull of the suite behind them. I am not saying you are wrong, he said. I am saying this is a very dangerous place to be right. The door to the suite opened then with a soft hiss. The frazzled nurse pushed through, almost colliding with Shaw. They want you back in there, she told him. Dr. Klein is going to intubate, and Mrs. Hale is demanding another consult. Shaw grimaced. Of course she is, he said. He started to move, then paused and looked back at Mara. Cole, he said, whatever you think you saw in those labs, just be careful how loudly you say it. He disappeared through the door. The hallway swallowed the sound of it closing. Mara braced her hands on the cart. Her fingers dug into the rubber of the handle. The urge to turn around, barge back inside, and plant herself at the foot of the bed until someone listened rose sharp and hot. She forced herself to stay where she was. Charging in without a plan got people killed. That had been lesson 1 year 1 in every bad place she had ever worked. You observe first. You gathered what you could. You moved when it mattered. Her lungs felt tight. She inhaled until it hurt, then let it out. Through the glass shadows moved against the far wall. A doctor stepped into view, head bent, mask hanging at his chin. Another raised a syringe. Evelyn's silhouette stayed near the foot of the bed still and composed a clear shape against the blue of the monitors. The chime of crystal on metal slipped through the door when it opened again. Mara looked up as Evelyn stepped into the hall. The door clicked shut behind her, cutting off the beeping and the voices. Out here, the silence felt artificial, like the inside of a sound booth. Evelyn's heels clicked once on the tile, then slowed. She saw Mara, and the smallest pause flickered in her stride before she continued forward. Up close, the billionaire's wife looked even more precise. Not a hair out of place, not a seam wrinkled. The only imperfection was a faint line at the corner of her mouth that might have been caused by grief or by annoyance, depending on how one chose to see it. "You are still here," she said. It was not a question. Mara straightened. "I have other rooms to stock," she replied. "I was just moving the cart." Evelyn let her gaze dip to the cart, then rise again. "You spoke very confidently in there," she said. "About altered labs, about patterns, for someone who is, what was it, float nights?" Mara kept her face neutral. "I spoke about what I saw," she said. Evelyn stepped closer. The scent of her perfume folded around them, sweet and sharp. "And what you saw," she asked softly, "is more accurate than what a building full of experts sees." There was no mockery in her tone. That made it worse. It sounded like genuine curiosity, as if she were trying to understand what kind of creature she was dealing with. "My experience is different," Mara said. "That is all." "Different," Evelyn repeated, "in a war zone." Mara's spine stiffened a fraction. "Dr. Shaw works with my husband often," Evelyn went on. "Dr. Klein has known him for 15 years. They trained at places you have seen on magazine covers. You have been here, half a year?" Mara stayed silent. Evelyn smiled. It was small and exact. "This building runs on loyalty, Ms. Cole," she said. "Loyalty to process. Loyalty to discretion. People who thrive here know when to speak and when not to." The implication settled between them. "If you have concerns," Evelyn continued, "you bring them to your supervisor. You do not throw them like grenades into a room full of cameras and frightened men." Mara's eyes flicked to the corner ceiling where a black dome camera watched the hallway. There were no cameras pointed at the chart, she said. Evelyn's smile cooled. "Are you threatening me?" she asked. Mara met her gaze. "No," she said. "I am telling you I am not blind." They stood like that, measuring each other. An unspoken contest. In the glass wall beside them, their reflections floated over the lights of the city, one woman in silk, the other in pale blue scrubs, both standing in the bright throat of the tower. At last, Evelyn exhaled through her nose, slow, controlled. "If you value your position here," she said. Voice so low it barely stirred the air, "you forget whatever you think you saw. You were never in that room in any meaningful way. You touched nothing. You questioned nothing. You will not bring my husband's name into any story that does not come from his board." She leaned in a fraction closer. "Because if you do," she added, "this place can spit you out so fast you will wonder if you were ever here at all." Then she straightened, smoothed an invisible wrinkle in her sleeve, and walked away. Her heels clicked a measured path down the hall toward the elevators. She did not look back. Mara watched her until the elevator doors closed behind her. The knot in her chest had grown heavier, but it had also changed. It was not only fear now, there was something else in it. A solidness. A line. She pushed the linen cart away from the alcove and parked it in a storage nook. Her hands worked on automatic sliding packages of gauze into place on a nearby shelf, straightening labels that were already straight. Down the hall, the VIP door opened again. A nurse hurried out, speaking quickly into a phone. "Pressure is dropping," she said. "They want the ventilator set up now. Dr. Lang is on her way." The door swung shut, cutting off the rest. Mara stood alone in the storage nook, surrounded by neat rows of supplies. The smell of plastic and cotton and antiseptic filled her nose. It should have been comforting, predictable, safe. Instead, it felt like standing in an armory where none of the weapons fit the fight in front of her. Her mind moved back through the labs, the nails, the smell, the wrongness. Back through Shaw's warning about danger and Evelyn's careful threat. Back through the years to a sandy field tent where a young soldier's organs had shut down while she watched, and the official report had called it foodborne illness. Her fingers curled against the shelf. If the system was clean, she could trust it. If it was not, then the usual tools would not be enough. She closed her eyes for a second, just long enough to hear the memory of a different voice, rough with dust and cigarette smoke. "If the chain of command is compromised, you save the patient anyway." When she opened her eyes, the supplies in front of her looked different. Not just stock, options. She checked that the hall was empty, then stepped out of the nook and turned away from the VIP suite. Down the corridor past the nurse's station and the cluster of family chairs, a metal door sat flush with the wall. It was unmarked except for a small black panel with a keypad. Behind that door was the controlled medication room. Behind that room, if St. Augustine was anything like the places she had worked before, was the storage for trial drugs and restricted compounds. Mara walked toward it. The keypad light above the metal door glowed a steady green waiting. Mara stopped in front of it and flexed her fingers once. Her hands felt solid again, the tremor from the VIP hall gone. She reached into her scrub pocket, pulled out her badge, and swiped it across the reader. A short beep answered. The lock clicked. The door opened inward on a smell she knew very well. Alcohol swabs, plastic, the faint chemical bite of concentrated medications. The controlled room was narrow and windowless, lined with steel cabinets and locked drawers. Shelves ran from floor to ceiling, filled with labeled bins and clear vials that caught the fluorescent light in sharp little flashes. A small refrigerator hummed quietly in the corner. A terminal blinked on a desk screensaver, swirling hospital logos. Mara stepped inside and let the door fall shut behind her. The sounds of the hallway cut off, replaced by the steady mechanical hum of the building's hidden infrastructure. Her pulse slowed a notch. This room felt honest in a way the VIP suite had not. At least here nothing pretended to be anything other than what it was. Muscle relaxers were muscle relaxers. Sedatives were sedatives. No one wrote a story over them. She crossed to the nearest cabinet and entered her code on the keypad. The latch retracted with a soft, metallic sigh. Inside rows of narcotic vials sat in white plastic trays, morphine, fentanyl, propofol. Not what she needed. She closed it and moved on her memory, reaching back through months of stalking runs and quick grabs during codes. She had never been in the back section of this room, but she had heard the pharmacists talk about trial lots, about restricted compounds, about things that technically did not exist here at all. At the far end, a smaller, darker cabinet stood alone. No label, just a red strip of tape across the front and a multi-digit keypad. She stopped in front of it. For half a heartbeat, she simply looked at the tape. Red sharp against steel, warning, not decoration. Her thumb hovered over the keypad. Her hand did not feel like it belonged to a float nurse anymore. It felt like it belonged to another version of herself, one who had moved through field chests and airdropped supply crates in dim tents under spinning fans. Back then, a medic had two jobs: keep people alive long enough to get them out, or long enough to get them home. Sometimes that meant using things that did not exist on paper. She entered a code that was not hers. 4 numbers she had seen over a pharmacist's shoulder one long, boring night when she had been asked to count inventory. She had not meant to memorize it. Her brain had done it anyway. The keypad flashed red, then green. The latch popped. Inside the shelves were sparser. Only a few boxes, a few vials. Metal ampules, dull gray, lying in foam cradles like bullets waiting in a magazine. Her eyes went straight to the ampules. They were unmarked except for a thin red band near the top. Her mouth tasted dry. She reached in and picked one up, between thumb and forefinger. It was heavier than it looked cool against her skin. She rolled it once, feeling the balance of it the way the liquid inside moved thick and slightly sluggish. Memories snapped into place. A rung ladder into the belly of a transport plane. A soldier whose blood pressure had flatlined and then clawed its way back after the push of something very much like this. The way the attending had looked at her afterward, equal parts furious and relieved. "You do not use that unless there is no other choice," he had said. She looked at the ampule now and thought of Victor on the bed. The false labs, the smell on his breath, the numbers on the monitor that did not belong to him. No other choice. The door behind her opened. Mara spun one hand, closing instinctively around the ampule, the metal bit into her palm. Dr. Arun Shah stood in the doorway, chest rising and falling a little faster than usual, as if he had taken the last stretch at a jog. His eyes flicked from her face to her hand to the open cabinet. They widened. "Tell me that is a coincidence," he said. Mara did not bother. She closed the cabinet with her elbow so the contents were no longer on display, then turned fully to face him. The ampule disappeared into her fist. "We do not have time for coincidences," she said. Shah stepped into the room and let the door swing shut. For a second, he simply listened as if confirming that no one had followed him. Then he focused on her again. "Do you know what that is?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "You know it is banned, outside of certain trials," he said. "You know this hospital is not one of the sites." "Yes." He scrubbed a hand over his face. He looked less like a doctor and more like a man who had not slept enough in several days. "Then put it back," he said. "Whatever you think is happening upstairs, that stuff is not the solution." Mara's fingers tightened around the ampule. "His organs are being forced into failure," she said. "I have seen this pattern before. Slow toxicity. Labs doctored to mimic autoimmune collapse. If we do not interrupt it, he will not make it to morning." "Oh, You do not know that, Shaw shot back, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. She took a step closer. His vitals do not match sepsis, she said. The labs do not match each other. They match a narrative, not a body. The smell on him is chemical. The nails, the staggered liver pattern. This is targeted. You know that is possible. You know what kind of enemies a man like Victor Hale has. Shaw held her gaze. I also know, he said slowly, what happens to staff who freelance with unapproved drugs on Billionaires. They do not lose jobs, Mara. They lose licenses. They lose freedom. There is no shield for you if this goes wrong. The room felt smaller with the two of them in it. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of a wall clock, the weight of the ampule between her fingers, all of it pressed in. I did not come here to stay safe, she said. It was the simplest truth she had. Shaw let out a humorless breath. Then you came to the wrong building, he said. The fluorescent light above them flickered once, a small stutter, then steadied. The moment stretched. On the other side of the closed door, faintly, an overhead announcement crackled to life in the hallway. The words were muffled by the walls, but the code came through clear. Code blue, VIP suite, code blue, VIP suite. Both of them froze for half a second. Shaw swore under his breath. That is him, he said. Mara did not need him to specify. Her stomach had already dropped. Her body moved before the fear fully registered. She slid the ampule into her scrub pocket deep enough that it would not fall if she ran. The metal was warm now from her grip. Shaw watched the movement. You cannot, he said, but there was less conviction in it. If Lang catches you with that anywhere near his line, she will bury you. She can try, Mara said. You do not understand how this place protects itself, he said. I understand enough, she replied. She moved toward the door. He stepped sideways, blocking it without quite touching her. The nearness put him within arm's reach. She could see the pulse in his neck too fast in time with her own. What exactly is your plan, he asked. Get to him, she said. Flesh what I can. Buy time. Enough for someone in pathology who is not bought to see what is really happening. How do you know there is anyone left who is not bought, he asked. I do not, she said, but he is still alive. That is more than some people expected. The meaning hung between them. Shaw's eyes darkened. You think this is coming from inside, he said. Not just some exotic pathogen from a trip or a weapon exposure. You think someone here is doing this on purpose. I think someone had access, she said, to his labs, to his medications, to his room. Images flickered through her mind. Klein's trembling hand, Evelyn's measured smile, the way everyone deferred to them without question. When you were in Afghanistan, Shaw asked, Did you always have permission for what you did in the field? The question caught her off guard. Her mouth opened, then closed. He gave a short, grim nod. That is what I thought, he said. You saved people by breaking rules. I tried to save people by following them. Look how that turned out for me. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. The tiredness in his posture said enough. The overhead speaker crackled again. Code blue VIP suite repeating. Shaw's shoulders slumped for the barest instant, then squared. When he spoke again, his tone had changed. If you do this, he said. I did not tell you where that cabinet was. I did not see that ampule. I am not Kyo signing anything in writing. I have a mother who still thinks I am a respectable doctor. There was a thread of dry humor in the last line, but his eyes were serious. Mara nodded once. I do not need a co-signer, she said. I just need you not to stop me. He moved away from the door. I am not going to help you, he said. She put her hand on the handle. Understood, she said. But I am also not going to stand here and watch you walk alone into a room full of people who want you quiet, he added. So if anyone asks, I dragged you back up there to answer for what you said about falsified labs. She looked at him. That is not exactly a compliment, she said. It's the best I can do, he replied. The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I will take it, she said. She pulled the door open. The hallway sound flooded back in at once. Footsteps, voices, the distant chime of an elevator. Somewhere closer, the shrill, insistent alarm of a running code. Shaw fell into step beside her as she started toward the VIP floor again. Her fingers brushed the ampule in her pocket, feeling the hard outline through the fabric, the red band hidden against her leg. Her pace quickened. Every beat of light in the polished floor seemed to point her in the same direction. Up. Toward the glass room and the man whose numbers did not match his body. The ride back up to the VIP level felt shorter than before, even though they took the same corridor. Codes had a way of warping time. What should have been a 30-second walk stretched and snapped at the same moment. As Mara and Shaw stepped into the main hall, the overhead lights seemed sharper, the white brighter. The air tasted thinner. Somewhere up ahead, a monitor alarm held a long, flat note before cutting off. 2 security guards were already posted outside the VIP suite door. They were not the rent-a-uniform type. Both wore dark tactical fabric under their hospital badges, shoulders broad stances wide. One had a barely healed scar running along his jawline, the kind that came from something sharp and quick. The other kept his hand close to the radio at his hip. Between them, the frosted glass door was shut. The gold letters Hale glowed under the hall lights. The taller guard lifted a hand as Mara approached. "Hold it," he said. "Authorized personnel only." Shaw flashed his badge out of habit. "I am internal medicine on the Hale case," he said. "They paged me. Code blue." The guard nodded once at Shaw and moved aside half a step. His gaze cut back to Mara and hardened. "She is not," he said. "She stays." Shaw frowned. "She is the assigned night nurse on this floor," he said. "She has been covering his suite all week." "New orders," the guard replied, "from Dr. Lang." As if summoned, Lang's name crackled from the guard's radio. "Doyle to front of VIP," a voice said. "No extra bodies. Keep traffic tight." The guard thumbed the radio. "Copy," he said. Mara felt the shape of the ampule in her pocket, a solid cylinder pressing against her hip. Her heart beat once, twice too hard. Through the frosted glass, she could just see moving shapes and colored light. Shadows leaned over the bed, a streak of blue from a nurse's scrub top, the stutter of monitor glow, the distinct outline of Evelyn at the foot of the bed, all clean lines and stillness. Mara took a breath. "You do not understand what is happening in there," she said to the guard. "They are about to treat the wrong thing. If they keep going the way they are going, he will die." The guard's jaw tightened. "Ma'am," he said, "my orders are to keep this doorway clear. Your opinion on medicine is above my pay grade." She opened her mouth again, but Shaw put a hand lightly on her arm. "Let me talk," he murmured. He shifted his weight, turning his attention fully on the guards. "You cannot bar his assigned staff from entry in the middle of a code," Shaw said. "That is exposure. If this comes back on the hospital and there is a record of you keeping critical personnel out, you and Lang will be answering questions in a room without windows." The guard with the scar did not flinch. "A room without windows sounds peaceful," he said. "She is still not going in." The other guard crossed his arms. "Dr. Lang said senior staff only," he added. "You qualify. She does not." Mara pulled her arm free of Shaw's touch. "I'm not asking to stand at the head of the bed," she said. "I just need 2 feet. He is not septic. Those labs are fiction. You keep me out, you are part of the story that kills him." Scarjaw's eyes narrowed. "Be careful what you accuse people of," he said. Behind the glass, a shape in a white coat stepped toward the door, then turned away. Someone lifted an arm, a hand, a syringe silhouette. The left guard's radio hissed again, full of static this time. A voice fought through the interference. "Pressure is 80/50, it reported. "I want that tube now." It was Klein's voice. A second voice, richer female, cut in over the channel. "Get that rookie out of my hallway," Dr. Lang said. "Now." Mara felt the words land like a shove. Lang had not bothered to leave the room. She was directing the hall from inside. Shaw's hand dropped from her sleeve. "I cannot override her on security," he said, frustration roughening his voice. "Not in the middle of a code." The taller guard stepped closer to Mara, not unkind but firm. "You heard the chief," he said. "You need to back away from the door." He reached out, fingers curling, to take her by the elbow. The contact was light. It made her skin crawl anyway. In her mind, the scene shifted. It was not a glass door anymore, but the back of a transport truck, doors swung wide. A superior officer blocking the steps. A patient inside, visible in flashes between bodies and gear. Orders to stand down. To wait. To let the system handle it. She had obeyed that time. The boy on the stretcher had not made it to morning. Back in the hall, the guard's fingers brushed the fabric of her sleeve. She took one step back as if conceding. Her shoulders dropped. Her gaze slid to the floor. Submission on the surface. The guard eased. "Good," he said. "Now move along." Her hands were no longer on the ampule. They had found the linen cart again where she had left it near the wall, still half loaded from earlier rounds. She had not even realized she had parked it so close to the door. Her fingers wrapped around the side rail. She looked up once, meeting Shaw's eyes. There was a flicker there of recognition, of understanding. He knew the look of someone lining up a move. "Mara," he said low. "Too late." She shifted her weight and shoved. The cart lurched forward with more force than its size suggested. Its wheels caught, then rolled fast. It shot toward the nearer guard, a beige blur of fabric bundles and metal frame. He swore and stepped to intercept, knee bending awkwardly as he caught the corner of the cart against his leg. The impact was not enough to injure, but it was enough to throw his balance off. His hand flew from her arm to grab the cart instead. The second guard reacted on instinct. He turned toward his partner, reaching out to steady him. For half a heartbeat, the space between their shoulders opened. Mara stepped into it. Her body remembered how to move. Low-angled, small. She cut through the narrow gap before either man registered the change. Her shoulder brushed fabric, but she did not collide with either of them. She reached the door and palmed the handle. It was already half unlatched from the nurses and doctors who had been flowing in and out. The glass gave under her push. She slipped through as the guards shouted behind her. "Hey, you cannot go in there." "Mara." Their voices hit the closing door and died there. Inside the suite, the sound changed all over again. The hallway noise vanished. The code claimed the air. The heart monitor at the head of the bed was screaming. A thin line of green jittered erratically across the screen, dipping dangerously low before stuttering back up. The blood pressure numbers were a smear of red, flickering, incomplete, catching updates that made no sense. Victor's chest fought for every breath. His mouth hung open around an oxygen mask, lips cracked, throat muscles straining. Sweat beaded on his forehead and ran in a slow line toward his temple. 2 nurses stood near the foot of the bed, one with gloved hands poised near his legs, the other wrestling with the ventilator tubing. A respiratory therapist cursed under his breath as he aligned the machine. At the head of the bed, Dr. Leonard Klein held a syringe in one hand and the IV port in the other. His eyes were narrowed, his face set in determined concentration. Evelyn stood just behind his shoulder. Her hand rested lightly on the bed rail again. The crystal glass was gone. Her fingers were bare now, no prop, only manicured nails and skin. Her expression did not match the chaos around her. It was not blank, but it was not broken either. Her eyes shone in the bright light, but no fresh tears marked her cheeks. Mara felt all of it in an instant. The positions, the power lines, the focus. She did not waste time on apologies. "Do not touch that line," she said. Her voice cut through the noise clean and sharp. Head snapped toward her. A nurse gasped. The respiratory therapist muttered something in Spanish under his breath that sounded like a prayer and a curse braided together. Klein's hand froze a breath away from the IV port. The syringe hung in the air, clear barrel, glinting fluid gleaming inside. He stared at Mara as if she had crawled out of the floor. "How did you get in here?" he demanded. Mara stepped fully into the room. "The usual way," she said, "through the people who were not watching the door." One of the senior nurses spun toward her. "You cannot be here, Cole," she snapped. "We are in the middle of a code." "Exactly," Mara said. "Which is why no one seems to notice you're about to finish what something else started." Evelyn's gaze traveled from the syringe to Mara's face. For a second, it sharpened the way glass does when light hits it at just the right angle. "Get her out," she said, quiet and controlled. No one moved yet. They were all waiting to see what Klein would do. Dr. Shaw slipped in behind Mara, slightly out of breath. He did not push forward, but his presence filled the doorway. The guards' shadows loomed on the other side of the glass. Shaw's voice came low and tense. "Leonard," he said, "maybe hear her out before you add anything new to that line." Klein shot him a look. "This is not the time for teaching rounds, Arun," he said. "He is circling the drain." Mara took another step forward, enough to bring her closer to the side of the bed. She could see Victor's face clearly now. The gray in his skin had deepened. His lips were edged in bluish white. The veins at his temples stood out like drawn lines. His fingers twitched against the sheet, that same odd, jerking movement she had seen before. Her hand brushed the outside of her pocket. The ampule pressed back a hard reassurance. The monitor screamed again. Time in the room narrowed to a point. She looked at the syringe in Klein's hand, at the IV line, at the small cap where he meant to inject. And then she spoke loud enough that no one could pretend they had not heard her. "If you push that," she said, "you will kill him." The room stopped moving. Even the monitor seemed to hesitate between beeps. Klein stared at Mara's syringe still suspended over the IV port. The plastic of the barrel creaked softly under his grip. "What did you just say?" he asked. Mara did not look at the syringe. She kept her eyes on his. "If you inject that," she said, "you will finish shutting down what little his organs have left." "This is standard sedation," Klein snapped. "He is fighting the vent. He is burning what is left of his reserves. He needs this." "It is not standard," Mara said. "The label is covered." Klein glanced down. The small white label wrapped around the barrel had indeed been folded so that only part of the drug name showed. It might have been an accident. It might not. He covered it again with his fingers. "You will step away from this bed," he said, "right now." The cardiac monitor chimed again, a frantic rhythm. Victor's body jerked. His fingers clawed weakly at the air, closing on nothing, then fell back to the sheet. Evelyn's hand tightened on the rail. The knuckles showed pale through her skin. "Dr. Klein," she said, her voice controlled. "If he is in pain, you help him. That is what he pays you for." "He is not in pain," Mara said, before she could stop herself. "He is drowning." Every pair of eyes that had not already been focused on her turned fully now. A nurse near the head of the bed shook her head. "Cole, you are out of line," she said. "I do not know what story you are running in your head, but this is not the time." Mara felt the expectant weight of the room waiting for her to fold. She did not. "This is not sepsis," she said. "This is a chemical hit. His labs are doctored. His vitals make no sense for infection. His nails, his smell, his pattern. You keep piling sedatives on top. You are helping whoever did this." A harsh breath escaped Shaw behind her. "Mara," he said, but his voice carried more warning than denial. Klein's jaw clenched. You are accusing this team of poisoning our own patient, he said. You realize how insane that sounds. I am accusing someone, Mara said. If you know exactly what is in that syringe, prove it. Show the label. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Klein did not move to turn the barrel. He did not have to. Suspicion had already slipped into the space. The respiratory therapist broke the quiet, tired, and sharp. We can argue conspiracy after he has a tube, he muttered. Right now his sats are dropping. Mara shifted her focus to the monitor. Oxygen saturation had dipped into the high 80s. The line that should have been smooth was jagged, hitching every few seconds. Her fingers brushed the ampule in her pocket again. Inhaling the same toxin will not help any of you either, she said. Whatever is killing him is still in his system. It is not a bug. It is engineered to look like one. Shaw stepped forward at last, placing himself between Klein and the port, without quite blocking him. Leonard, he said, if she is right, even partly we need to reconsider what we are giving him. Just because something came from our own pharmacy does not mean it is innocent. Klein's lips thinned. You are not an intensivist, he said. You are here as courtesy. Do not overstep. Shaw's eyes flashed. Courtesy does not explain altered labs, he said. Or why all the results upstairs are on paper when every other floor uses live terminals. A flush rose along Klein's neck. Those labs came through standard channels, he said. If you have such a problem with process, take it up with Lang after we either save him or call time. A nurse at the side bed whispered, Maybe somebody should page Lang right now. She is on her way, someone answered. She was in the East Wing. Give her a minute. 1 minute felt like an hour. Victor's chest rose again, then held for a heartbeat too long before falling. His lashes fluttered. His pupils moved beneath them, frantic, trapped. Mara stepped to his side. She touched his wrist lightly, fingers settling over his pulse. It thudded under her touch, fast, irregular, not matching the clean numbers the monitor was trying to sell. She spoke without lifting her gaze. When his kidneys crashed completely, she said he will not come back. This is not about comfort. It is about whether there is anything left to save. You are done here, Klein said. He reached past Shaw, a sudden hard movement born of long habit. Years of being the one in charge had trained his muscles to expect no resistance. This time there was. Mara let go of Victor's wrist and moved. Her hand came up not to grab his arm, but to catch his wrist lightly but firmly in midair. She kept her fingers on the bone, not the skin, her grip more about angle than force. The entire room inhaled as one. You lay a hand on me and I will have you out of this hospital before this night is over, Klein hissed. Mara did not tighten her grip. She did not let go either. I do not care what happens to me, she said. I care what happens to him. Evelyn took one smooth step closer until she stood almost at Klein's shoulder. This is absurd, she said, tone clipped. Security will remove her. Dr. Klein, you will do whatever you think necessary to keep my husband alive. Alive. The word hung strangely in the air. Mara's eyes flicked to Evelyn's face. There was something in that expression now, a crack in the careful mask. Not fear, annoyance, a touch of urgency that did not match a frightened wife. Mara released Klein's wrist. Before he could react, she moved her hand in a quick, practiced motion to the IV line, sliding her fingers along the tubing, feeling for the injection port that was not currently occupied. There is another option, she said. Her other hand went into her pocket. She drew out the ampule. For a split second, the room did not understand what it was looking at. The metal cylinder was small, unmarked, save for that thin red band. Shaw inhaled sharply. Mara, he said, warning deep in his voice. Klein's eyes widened. You have got to be joking, he said. Evelyn's gaze snapped to the ampule, then back to Mara's face. Her composure slipped for the first time, only a fraction. Her lips parted. A flicker of something sharp flashed through her eyes. What is that? She asked. Mara held the ampule low close to her body, not offering it for inspection. It is the only thing in this building that might pull his organs out of free fall long enough for us to identify the toxins, she said. It was designed for that. Short-term systemic shock. Kickstart. Experimental, Shaw said. Unapproved here, restricted. Klein actually took a step back, as if the tiny object in her palm were a live grenade. You are insane, he said. You have no idea how his system will respond. You could arrest him on the spot. He is going there anyway, Mara said. The pace is just slower. Shaw's eyebrows drew together. You have used it before, he said. It was not a question. Mara nodded once. He swallowed. And he asked. She met his eyes. And sometimes it worked, she said softly. Sometimes we got them on choppers they would not have seen otherwise. And the times it did not, Shaw pressed. They were going to die regardless, she said. The compound did not kill them. The war did. This is not a war, but his body does not know that. The group around the bed shifted. The nurse by the ventilator stared at the ampule as if trying to decide whether to scream for security or for help. The monitor wailed again, the green line dipping low, almost flat. Evelyn's hands curled against the rail. The tendons at her wrists stood out. None of this sounds like medicine, she said. It sounds like gambling with my husband's life. Mara did not look at her. Every order in this room is a gamble, she said. This one just acknowledges it. Klein shook his head hard. You are not touching my line with that, he said. If you so much as connect it, I will have you arrested. I will testify myself. Mara lifted the ampule, rolling it between her fingers. You are very certain about what will happen if I do, she said. You sound less certain about what will happen if you do nothing. I have a plan, Klein said. Sedate, intubate, pressors if needed, supportive care. We let the antibiotics and his immune system do their job. His immune system is not fighting a pathogen, Mara said. It is fighting a design. The silence that followed was broken by a sound from the bed. Victor made a noise. It was not a word. It was a raw, low sound dragged from his throat. His head turned slightly as if following a voice only he could hear. His fingers curled and uncurled again. Mara leaned closer. His eyelids fluttered, then cracked open a fraction. The whites were tinted yellow. The irises were a faded blue. They tried to focus. For a second, she did not see a billionaire or a headline. She saw a patient trying to stay anchored to something in a room where no one could agree on what that something should be. Victor, she said quietly, you are not alone. His gaze shifted unfocused in the general direction of her voice. His lips moved. No sound formed. The effort drained him. His eyes slid half-closed again. The monitor flashed another warning. Overhead, the speaker clicked. Chief of Medicine to VIP Suite, a voice announced. Chief of Medicine to VIP Suite. Lang was close now. Time narrowed again. Mara looked at Shaw. He was watching Victor, not her. You are really going to do this, he said. Yes, she said. You are out of your mind, he said. Yes, she agreed. His mouth twitched a tiny grim expression that was not quite a smile. Then make it count, he said. He turned, placing himself just enough in Klein's line of sight that the older doctor would have to physically move him to get closer. Klein stared at him, betrayal and fury mixing in his eyes. Arun, he said. You want to tackle a nurse in front of your entire team? Go ahead, Shaw said calmly. I will send you the malpractice forms later. It was not a perfect shield, it was something. Mara moved fast. Her fingers found the small red band, twisted the top of the ampule. The seal broke with a soft crack. The smell hit her nose immediately, faint but distinctive, like alcohol cut with burned metal. She grabbed an open port on the secondary IV line, slid the ampule neck in place, and fitted a flesh syringe behind it in the same movement. Stop her, Evelyn snapped. No one was close enough. Mara pushed the plunger. The fluid went in, clean chased by saline. She watched the chamber empty every drop. Her thumb stayed steady. Her breathing did not. Then it was done. She stepped back half a pace, eyes up on the monitor. For a heartbeat, nothing changed. The heart rate held in the 130s, scattered and weak. The pressure numbers flickered without landing. The oxygen saturation hovered in the high 80s. 1 second, 2, 3. The green line dipped again. Something in Mara's chest clenched. Then the wave rose. Not much, not dramatic, but higher than it had been. The peaks on the screen sharpened the intervals between them, evening out by fractions. The alarm tone shifted, adjusting to the new rhythm. Victor's fingers twitched again. His chest rose in a fuller breath, ribs expanding more than they had since she had entered the room. Color, faint and fragile, began to creep back from the absolute edges of his lips toward the center. Holy, the respiratory therapist whispered. Sats are climbing, the nurse at the monitor said, voice climbing with them. 90, 92, 94. Klein stared at the screen as if it had personally betrayed him. That proves nothing, he said, but the certainty had leaked out of his tone. Transient response. Could be artifact. Victor's eyes flickered open a little wider. He looked straight at Mara. This time his lips formed a shape. Help, he mouthed. Barely audible, but there. Evelyn took a half step back from the bed. The fine line at the corner of her mouth deepened into something harsher. Her hands left the rail as if it had grown hot. What did you give him? She demanded. Mara did not look away from Victor. The closest thing he has to a chance, she said. The question hung in the bright air of the room, sharp as a scalpel. What did you give him? Evelyn's voice had lost its smoothness. It cut now, brittle around the edges. Mara finally looked at her. The billionaire's wife stood rigid beside the bed, arms no longer relaxed at her sides. Her fingers were curled inward, digging small crescents into her own palms. On the monitor, the green line climbed another notch toward a more regular rhythm. The alarm shifted from a continuous shriek back to intermittent chirps. Oxygen saturation ticked to 96 then 98. He is stabilizing the nurse at the monitor, said, unable to keep the astonishment out of her voice. The respiratory therapist glanced between the screen and Victor's face. Breathing is easier, he said. Look at his chest. He is actually pulling air instead of just fighting it. Victor blinked slowly like a man surfacing from deep water. His gaze slid past Shaw, past Klein, and settled on Mara. His lips shaped her name without sound. Mara, she swallowed. It is a rescue compound, she said, answering Evelyn at last. Short-term systemic stimulant. It pulls organs out of shutdown. It was the only thing that could counter what was happening to him fast enough. Klein stepped in front of her, cutting off the line of sight between her and the bed. His face was flushed, his jaw set hard. You administered a prohibited substance, he said, without order, without consent, on a critically ill patient in a code. On a patient who was dying on your watch, Mara said. And now he is not. This is insanity, Klein snapped. We have no idea what else that drug will do to his system. You could have triggered irreversible damage. Mara nodded at the monitor. Whatever damage was coming was already on the way, she said. We just changed its schedule. Who authorized that medication? A new voice asked. The noise in the room thinned around it. Dr. Martha Lang stood in the doorway, framed by the lights of the hallway. The chief of medicine wore no coat, only slacks and a white blouse, as if she had left another meeting and walked straight here. Her gray hair was cropped close, no nonsense. Her eyes took in the scene in one sweep. Shaw, Kleinfuss, the ventilator team, Evelyn, Victor still alive. Mara standing too close to the bed with an empty ampule and a syringe in the disposal bin. Lang stepped inside, the door sighed shut behind her. Report, she said. The nurse at the monitor spoke first voice, brisk with the practiced cadence of someone used to giving code summaries. Patient had dropped into unstable tachyarrhythmia, she said. Low pressure dropping agonal breathing patterns. Dr. Klein was preparing sedation before intubation. Nurse Cole entered the room without authorization, interfered with the line, and administered an unknown compound through a secondary port. After administration, vitals began to improve. Lang's gaze locked onto Mara. Unknown compound, she repeated. Is that correct, Ms. Cole? It is not unknown to me, Mara said. I know exactly what it is and what it does. I have used it in the field before. That is not what I asked, Lang said. Her voice was calm, each word precise. Is it unknown to this hospital's formulary, to our trials, to our pharmacists, to me? Yes, Mara said. A muscle ticked in Lang's cheek. Is it recorded anywhere in his electronic chart, she asked. No, Mara said. Did any attending in this room order it, Lang asked. Silence answered. Shaw's jaw worked. Klein folded his arms tightly. The nurses stared at the floor. Lang let the quiet stretch. Then, as far as this institution is concerned, she said you might as well have drawn fluid from a mop bucket and injected it into our highest profile patient. That is not what this is, Mara said. It does not matter what it is, Lang replied. What matters is that you bypassed every safeguard in place, every level of oversight, and made yourself the final authority on a man whose life affects thousands of jobs and contracts. Victor shifted on the bed. Doc, he rasped. It was little more than a sound, rough and broken, but it cut through the air all the same. Everyone turned to look at him. His eyes were half open now, pupils focused if weakly. He drew a breath and winced. The ventilator mask fogged with the exhale. Evelyn stepped toward the bed, the first genuinely unsteady motion she had made all night. Vic, she said, do not try to talk. He lifted a hand a few inches off the blanket. It trembled. His fingers spread, then dropped back again. The monitor kept its new rhythm. Lang watched him for 3 quiet seconds, then turned away. Whatever she felt, she did not show it. This conversation is not about him, she said. It is about liability, protocol, chain of command. Mara felt something tight twist inside her. It is about him, she said. It has always been about him. Lang's eyes hardened. You are done speaking, she said. Security. The door opened almost before the word left her mouth. The 2 guards from the hall stepped in, shoulders squared, expressions blank. Scarjaw's gaze moved over the room, found Mara, and settled. Dr. Lang, he said. Escort Nurse Cole to security, Lang said. She is suspended pending investigation. Collect her ID and restrict her access. I want a full report on my desk before morning. Shaw took a step forward. Dr. Lang, with all due respect, he began, she just prevented a cardiac arrest. We do not know that, Lang said. We know that his vitals changed after she used an unapproved drug. Whether she saved him or merely complicated his case will be determined by committee, not by adrenaline. In the meantime, she is a risk to everyone in this room. Evelyn watched the exchange with an expression that would have looked like concern from a distance. Up close, Mara could see something else in it. Calculation. Relief. The faint curve of satisfaction at the corner of her mouth. Lang turned to her. Mrs. Hale, she said you have my word that this behavior will be addressed. Whatever action we take, we will keep you informed. Evelyn nodded slowly. I appreciate that, she said. I realize tonight has been difficult on your staff. People make mistakes under pressure. Her gaze flicked to Mara on the last word, as if placing it gently around her neck. Scarjaw stepped to Mara's side. The other guard moved to the opposite flank. Hans, Scarjaw said quietly. For a second, she did not understand. Then she saw the cuffs in his hand. Cold metal, familiar shape. A flicker of anger rose in her throat, not because of the cuffs themselves, because of where they had been before, on wrists that had held rifles, on hands that had done less damage than the people giving the orders. She did not resist. She lifted her wrists. The steel closed around them with a soft click. The fit was snug, not cruel, but it bit into her skin just enough to leave a mark. Shaw swore under his breath. "This is ridiculous," he said. "We should be reviewing the labs, not parading a nurse through the halls like a criminal." "You want to question my decision?" Dr. Shaw scheduled a meeting with risk management, Lang said. "Right now, my concern is that there are cameras on this floor and lawyers who read charts like Bibles. I will not have footage of unauthorized staff pushing mystery drugs into VIP lines. Remove her." Scarjaw touched Mara's arm. "Let's go," he said. She allowed herself one last look at the bed. Victor met her eyes again. His gaze was clear now, though still clouded with pain and confusion. His lips moved. "Do not," Evelyn murmured, leaning closer to him as if shushing a child who wanted to speak in church. He did not manage a full word, but his fingers lifted, reaching toward Mara's direction. The distance between his hand and hers felt enormous. Then the guard guided her toward the door, and that thin thread of eye contact snapped. The hallway swallowed her again, along with the smell of antiseptic and faint perfume and the sound of the closing door. The cuffs weighed heavier than they should have. They did not drag her wrists down physically, but every step she took echoed with the metallic rhythm of them. Scarjaw walked on her left, his partner on her right. Shaw followed them into the hall. Captain Shaw said, addressing Scarjaw, "At least let me walk with you. I want her side of this on record before Lang's version is the only one anyone hears." Scarjaw glanced over. "You can walk," he said. "You cannot interfere." Not planning to, Shaw replied, "Interfering has not gone well for me so far tonight." They moved down the corridor away from the glittering glass of the VIP section. The lights grew less bright, the walls less polished. The carpet changed from plush to standard hospital tile. The air cooled. Staff they passed looked up, then looked away quickly when they saw the cuffs. Word traveled fast in any building. It traveled at light speed in a hospital where boredom and fear were the only currencies cheaper than gossip. Mara kept her gaze straight ahead. They turned down a side hallway that ended in a reinforced door with a badge reader. Security level access only. Scarjaw scanned his card. The lock clicked heavy and final. Inside, the security office felt like a different world. The lights were dimmer. Monitors lined one wall, each showing a different camera angle from around the hospital. A desk sat under them, papers and coffee cups scattered. A whiteboard held scribbled notes about patrol shifts and maintenance requests. A younger guard with headphones half on looked up as they entered. "Busy night," he said. Then he saw the cuffs, his expression sobered. "You want the holding room?" "Yes," Scarjaw said. He steered Mara past the desk down a short corridor to a small windowless room. It held a metal bench bolted to the wall, a plain table, and nothing else. The air was colder here, the chill settling through her scrubs to the skin. Scarjaw guided her inside and motioned toward the bench. "Sit," he said. She sat. The cuffs bit into her wrists again as they came to rest on her lap. The red marks under the metal stood out against her skin. "You going to chain me to the table too?" she asked. He studied her for a moment. "Not unless you give me a reason," he said. "For what it is worth, I have seen worse stunts on this floor. They usually do not happen in front of the chief." He removed his hand from her arm and stepped back. The other guard took up position near the door, arms crossed. Shaw hovered just outside the threshold. "Can I have 5 minutes?" he asked. Scarjaw considered. "Door stays open," he said. "I am in the hall. She is not to be left alone." "Fair," Shaw said. Scarjaw moved aside, positioning himself where he could see both the holding room and the monitors at the main desk. He did not close the door fully, just let it rest against the frame. Shaw stepped in. For a few seconds he said nothing. He simply looked at Mara, at the cuffs, at the thin red grooves on her wrists. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "Pride," she said. "That is about it." He exhaled a short sound that could have been a laugh if it had not been so tired. "I have seen people walk out of operating rooms with less conviction than you walked into that one," he said. "You know that, right?" She looked at the floor. "It was not about conviction," she said. "It was about math, time, patterns." His gaze sharpened. "You really believe he was being poisoned?" he said. "Yes," she said. There was no hesitation in it. He nodded slowly. "Then injection or not, you just painted a target on your back," he said. "They are already spinning a story out there. Unstable nurse, unauthorized drug use, obsession with the patient. It will look very clean on paper." Her stomach dipped. "Obsession," she repeated. He leaned against the table, crossing his arms. "Evelyn told Lang and security that you have been hovering around his suite," he said. Staring at him. Overstepping. "She's implying there is something personal." Mara felt a flash of incredulous anger. "I am assigned to his floor," she said. "I chart. I watch monitors. I do my job. And your job, Shaw said quietly, is about to be recast as stalking. She let her head fall back against the wall for a second. The cold metal pressed into her skull, grounding and unpleasant. This is not about me, she said. Tonight it is, he replied. You gave them a scapegoat that is not wearing diamonds or tenure. She rolled her shoulders, trying to ease the tightness in them despite the cuffs. Then we need proof, she said. Real proof. Not my gut, not my memories. Something solid. He nodded. Like a vial, he said, in someone's bag. The image of Evelyn's purse came back to her. The brief glint of glass she had seen earlier when the wife had stepped away from the bed to dab her eyes. The quick movement of something small and fragile vanishing into leather. If she brought it once, Mara said she will bring it again. Shaw pushed off the table. Then we have to hope Victor stays alive long enough to tell his own story, he said, because yours will not be enough. She looked at him. You believe me, she said. More than I want to, he answered. Outside, a phone rang at the security desk. A guard answered, voice low. The call was short. The receiver clicked back into place. Scarjaw appeared in the doorway. Time is up, Doc, he said. Lang wants you back upstairs. They are running new panels now that he is not circling the drain. Shaw straightened. All right, he said. He paused at the threshold and looked back at Mara. I will see what I can find, he said. Stay calm. Do not give them anything extra. She lifted her cuffed wrists a fraction. Not much else I can give, she said. He gave a small nod and left. The door settled against the frame again. The room felt smaller with him gone. Mara sat on the metal bench, listening to the faint hum of air through the vent and the distant murmur of voices from the main office. The adrenaline that had carried her up and down flights of stairs and through a gauntlet of authority was fading now, leaving behind a kind of heavy clarity. She looked at her wrists. The red grooves from the cuffs formed thin bands around the skin, red bands, like the one on the ampule. Her hands relaxed on her lap. Whatever story the hospital tried to write about her, she had seen the pattern underneath. Numbers could lie. People could lie. Bodies rarely did. In the quiet of the windowless room, she went back over every detail in her mind, arranging them, stacking them, building something from them that would hold, when the next set of doors opened. The minutes in the holding room stretched in a way they never did on a ward. There were no monitors here, no vital signs to chart, no alarms to acknowledge, just the slow tick of a vent somewhere in the walls and the faint murmur of security chatter in the next room. Mara sat very still, listening to her own breathing. It had finally settled into a steady rhythm. Her hands cuffed in her lap no longer shook. Footsteps approached along the short corridor outside. They stopped, then passed by. A door opened and closed. A chair scraped. Someone laughed at something on a screen. Life moving on one room away from where hers waited for review. She closed her eyes briefly and let the earlier scenes replay themselves. Victor's nails, the smell in the air, the way his pupils had struggled to focus, the needle in Klein's hand, the red band on the ampule, the slow rise of the green line on the monitor afterward. There were pieces there enough to build something. Not a complete structure yet, but the beginning of one. The door handle clicked. Her eyes opened. Dr. Arun Shah stood in the doorway again. This time his white coat was gone. His scrub top was wrinkled and there was a fine sheen of sweat at his hairline. He looked like someone who had jogged up several flights of stairs and debated all the way. Scarjaw glanced in behind him from the outer office. 5, he said. Then I have to log her in for formal processing if no one gives me different orders. Shaw nodded. Understood, he said. He stepped inside. Scarjaw stayed in the doorway, arms folded, expression unreadable. Mara sat forward a little on the bench. How is he? She asked. Alive, Shaw said, more alive than any of them expected. A knot she had not realized she was still holding loosened in her chest. Vitals, she asked. Heart rate in the low hundreds, Shaw said. Pressure climbing into a range that makes the machines less angry. Sats holding without max oxygen. Kidneys still unhappy, but there is output. Liver numbers are bizarre, but they are bizarre in a new way. That compound bought time, Mara said. Yes, Shaw said. It did. He stared at her wrists for a heartbeat. Lang is furious, he added. She is already on the phone with Risk and Legal. There will be meetings. There will be language in emails that uses words like egregious and reckless. Evelyn, Mara asked. Went straight to Lang after they took you out, Shaw said. Then she called security. Then she called someone else. She did not say who in front of anyone, but whatever she said, it ended with the word prosecution. Mara's jaw clenched. For what she asked. Saving her husband. For attempting to poison him according to her version, Shaw said. She is telling people you pushed something into his line that was not ordered, and then he crashed. If he had flatlined, that is the story that would stand. But he did not, Mara said. That makes you inconvenient, Shaw replied. Not safe. Outside in the office, a phone rang again. Scarjaw turned his head to listen as another guard answered. Security, the guard said. Yeah, she is here. Shaw lowered his voice a little. Evelyn is saying, You have been hovering, he said. Too many hours outside his room, watching him, asking questions. She is building a picture of someone unbalanced, fixated, taking matters into her own hands to feel important. Mara let out a short breath that carried very little humor. There is a word for women who refuse to stay invisible, she said. It gets used a lot when they do their job too well. Shaw's mouth twitched. Lang is not using that word, he said. She's using statistics. Nurses involved in medication deviations, errors, burnout. She will make you sound like part of a trend instead of an exception. That is useful for them, Mara said. Very, he agreed. The guard in the outer office called out. Captain, he said. Chief wants you in here. They are bringing Hale down on a stretcher. Says he wants to see the feed from the floor himself. Scarjaw's head snapped toward the monitors. He is coming down here, he asked. That is what they said, the other guard answered. Chief Lang is not happy, but the man signed half the checks in this place. Hard to tell him no. Scarjaw looked back at Mara and Shaw. Stay put, he told them. He stepped away from the doorway toward the main desk. The door to the holding room remained open a hand's width. Through the gap, Mara could see a slice of the monitor wall in the security desk. Shaw turned back to her eyebrows slightly raised. If he is downstairs, he said, this gets more complicated. Mara felt her heart pick up again, not with panic this time, but with a different kind of charge. Victor Hale moving was not in any of the scripts Lang had likely prepared. He asked to come, she asked. Apparently, Shaw said. I was in the hall when they loaded him. He was awake enough to argue. He might not remember the details exactly, but he knows something changed after you did what you did. The hallway outside filled with new footsteps, voices, the squeak of stretcher wheels. Scarjaw's voice carried through the gap. All right, bring him through. Mind the cables. Mara stood without meaning to. The cuffs tugged at her wrists, metal bit skin. She ignored it. Shaw stepped aside so he was no longer directly between her and the door. The stretcher came into view in the outer office. Victor Hale lay on it, propped up slightly, a blanket over his legs. The ventilator mask had been replaced by a nasal cannula. Plastic tubes ran from his arms to portable drips hanging off the stretcher frame. His face was still too pale, but there was more color than there had been upstairs. His eyes were open. They focused slowly on the bank of monitors, then drifted to the guards, then to the open door of the holding room. He saw Mara. For a second, his expression did not change. Then recognition slid into place. He looked down at her wrists, at the cuffs, then back at her face. Her, he said, voice rough. Why is she in there? Lang appeared beside the stretcher, irritation masked by a professional smile. Mr. Hale, she said, you should be resting in ICU. We have everything under control. Security is simply doing its due diligence after an incident. Victor did not look at her. Incident, he repeated. His voice gathered strength with each word. You mean the part where I stopped dying? Lang's smile tightened. We are very pleased you are responding to treatment, she said. We can discuss the specifics of staff conduct when you are more stable. I'm stable enough, he said. Open that door. Scarjaw hesitated, then glanced at Lang. She did not give the nod. Victor saw the non-gesture and turned his head toward the guard. I own this building, he said. Open the door. Authority had a sound. It was not volume. It was not anger. It was the weight of someone who had given orders so long they no longer considered the alternative. Scarjaw keyed the lock. The door swung inward, revealing Mara fully cuffs and bench and all. Victor's eyes narrowed. What is your name, he asked. Mara Cole, she said. He nodded as if confirming something to himself. You pulled me back, he said. Upstairs. Yes, she said. She also violated protocol in a way that puts this hospital at risk. Lang cut in. We are addressing both facts. Victor ignored her again. What you gave me, he asked. Mara, that was not on my chart. No, she said. It was not. It hurt, he said. She did not look away. I know, she said. He considered her for a long breath. Hurting meant there was something left to hurt, he said. Before that, there was nothing. Lang shifted her weight. Victor, she said, dropping the formal title, we are not minimizing her impact. I will personally oversee the review of her actions. But security measures are in place for a reason. She cannot roam the hospital after what she did. She is currently in cuffs, Shaw pointed out quietly. She's not roaming anywhere. Victor looked at the metal encircling Mara's wrists. How long has she been restrained, he asked. Long enough to process the fact that she bypassed 3 levels of oversight, Lang said. And long enough for us to begin documenting the incident. Evelyn Hale walked into view, then heels clicking on the tile. She wore a new blouse, the color a deep wine instead of earlier pearl. Her hair was still perfect. Her eyes looked a touch tired, but there were no red rims, no puffiness. Vic, she said, coming to his side, you should not be down here. This is a security office. You need rest and quiet. He gave her a brief look. I have had plenty of quiet, he said. I would like some answers. She followed his gaze to Mara. Her mouth tightened almost imperceptibly. We have answers, she said. That nurse acted outside her role, Owusi. She shoved something into your IV. After that, everything went wild. You almost coded. I remember, Victor said. I also remember your face when the numbers moved the right direction. Evelyn smiled quick and fragile. I was relieved, she said. Of course I was relieved. You were still with me. Scarjaw's radio crackled again soft under the conversation. Mara watched Evelyn. There it was again, the small seam in the smooth surface, the way her fingers tightened on the side of the stretcher just a little too hard. The brief glance not at Victor but at his charts clipped to the foot of the bed. She cleared her throat. Mrs. Hale has been very vocal about her concerns, she said, unable to keep the dry edge from her tone. She believes I am unstable, possibly dangerous. Evelyn's gaze snapped to her. I believe you are reckless, Evelyn said, and that you nearly made a tragedy worse with your interference. Mara tipped her head. And I believe your purse contains a vial that does not match any prescription on your husband's chart, she said. The room went very still. Even the hum of the monitors seemed to fade. Evelyn's lips parted in a small disbelieving sound. I am sorry, she said slowly. What did you just say? You put something in your bag upstairs, Mara said. Small, glass, clear liquid with an iridescent sheen. You moved it from the bedside table after I confronted you. You did not want anyone to see it. Open your purse. Shaw's eyes widened. Lang's head turned sharply. This is getting out of hand, Lang said. Cole, you are in no position to level accusations. Mara did not look away from Evelyn. Open it, she said. Evelyn laughed a soft, incredulous sound. You are in handcuffs, she said. You are in a holding room. You have admitted to injecting my husband with a mystery chemical, and you think anyone is going to take your word over mine about what I carry in my purse. She lifted the bag slightly on her arm, letting the light catch the polished leather. This is in Hermes, she said, not a crime scene. Mara's voice stayed calm. Then opening it will clear that right up, she said. Evelyn's eyes turned cold. You do not give orders here, she said. Victor shifted on the stretcher. Evelyn, he said, open it. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. She stared at him. Vic, she said softly, you do not actually believe I would do anything to hurt you. Open it, he repeated. He had not raised his voice, but the sound filled the office. Scarjaw's hand drifted to his belt, not to his weapon, but to the small evidence bags clipped there. Lang's jaw tightened. This is not appropriate, she said. We should handle any search through proper channels. Victor did not look at her. Proper channels almost killed me, he said. For once we are going to do something simple. She opens the bag. People look inside. Then we see who is telling stories. Evelyn's fingers dug into the leather strap of the purse. The knuckles showed sharp and white. For a moment, Mara thought she might bolt. Just turn and walk. Take the elevator, leave the building, vanish into the city night, where someone with money and a head start could disappear. Instead, Evelyn inhaled slow and steady. She shifted the purse to the crook of her elbow and reached for the clasp. Her hand shook, only a little, but after hours of perfect control, the tremor looked enormous. She flipped the clasp open. The purse mouth parted. The light from the office overhead spilled inside, catching on metal and glass. Scarjaw stepped closer. Ma'am, he said, if you would not mind setting that on the table. She did not move. Victor spoke again. Evelyn, he said. The sound of his voice nodded with something else in the air. Years of marriage. Deals. Shared rooms in places far away from this cold office. Her eyes reddened at the edges. With a sharp, jerky motion, she lifted the purse and set it on the table just inside the holding room door. Scarjaw nodded to the younger guard. Gloves, he said. The guard snapped on a pair from the box by the door, then reached into the purse, moving aside a wallet, a phone, a folded silk scarf. His hand closed around a small, cool shape. He lifted it out into the fluorescent light. A glass vial no wider than a thumb turned in his gloved fingers. Clear liquid filled it 3/4 of the way. Under the office lights, the fluid caught a faint, iridescent sheen oil on water, subtle but unmistakable. Nobody spoke. Mara tasted metal on her tongue that was not from the room. Shaw swore under his breath. Lang said nothing at all. Victor stared at the vial as if it were a live animal. What is that? He asked his wife, and why did you bring it into my room? The vial looked almost harmless. It sat between the guard's gloved fingers, no bigger than a lipstick, a clear tube of liquid with that strange oily sheen sliding along the glass as it tilted under the lights. Victor watched it like it might sprout teeth. I will ask again, he said. What is that, and why was it in your bag? Evelyn's eyes were fixed on the vial too. For a heartbeat her face was blank, clean as glass. Then she seemed to remember herself. It is nothing, she said. A supplement, something my nutritionist recommended. Everyone is taking them now. Scarjaw glanced over. Name of the supplement, he asked. Evelyn's gaze flicked to him, then back to Victor. You think I'm keeping track of every brand these people push, she said. I take what they tell me to take. I barely have time to breathe as it is. Her voice trembled, but not quite in the right places. It shook on the words with no weight, stayed smooth on the ones that mattered. Mara stayed quiet. The guard holding the vial turned it carefully, reading the tiny print on the label. After a moment, he frowned. There is no brand name on here, he said. Just a batch code, no manufacturer. Lang stepped closer, arm crossing over her chest. Let me see that, she said. The guard handed it over. She held it up to the light lips thinning as she examined the glass. This is not from our pharmacy, she said. It is not from any registered trial on site either. It is a private blend, Evelyn said quickly. From a holistic clinic in River North. They do not use commercial labels. They are discreet. Discreet, Victor repeated. The word sat on his tongue like something sour. He looked at Mara. Is that what you saw her move upstairs, he asked. Yes, Mara answered. Same size. Cupcas. Same color, same shine. Lang turned the vial slowly. When she spoke, her tone had shifted. Less automatic, sharper. Mrs. Hale, she said, I am going to have to ask you directly. Did any doctor in this building prescribe this? Evelyn let out an incredulous breath. Of course not, she said. Doctors do not prescribe vitamins. Not in this country. Not unless they are billing for it. Then why did you bring it into a restricted suite, Lang asked. And why did you hide it when my staff were present? I did not hide anything, Evelyn shot back. I moved it out of the way so your people would not knock it over while they played with their machines. Her composure was cracking. Hairline fractures, but real ones. The hand not touching the stretcher trembled. Victor watched her with a gaze that was growing steadier by degrees. The rescue compound still rode his system, pulling his organs along like reluctant passengers. It had given his mind enough space to climb back into the room. You had that with you the whole time, he said. Every time I woke up. Every time I passed out. You were standing there with that in your hand. Evelyn swallowed. I was trying to help, she said. I have been trying for years. You do not listen. You listen to your board, your advisors, your generals, never to me. She was talking too fast now, the words beginning to slide into each other. That vial, he said, is not from any lab I pay for. No, she said. It is from someone who actually knows what you are, who you have made enemies with, who knows what they would do if they decided to come after you. The room shifted around those sentences. Shaw's eyes narrowed. You are saying this came from the security consultants, he said, from someone outside the hospital hired to protect him. Evelyn's laugh was short and sharp. Security, she said. Protection. Call it whatever you want. They were very clear about how vulnerable you are. One compromised meal, one bad drink, one wrong handshake. Everyone wants a piece of the man who arms half the world. Victor's gaze hardened. So your response, he said slowly, to being told I could be poisoned from the outside was to bring an unmarked vial into my room and pour it into me yourself. I did not pour anything, she snapped. I followed instructions, tiny doses, micro adjustments, just enough to slow you down until someone could really look at what was happening to your body instead of rushing you back to work with a pat on the back. Mara heard the twist the moment the words left her mouth. Slow him down, she repeated quietly. Evelyn shot her a look that could have cut glass. You think I wanted him dead, she said. I wanted him to stop before someone else made that choice for him, before his heart gave out in front of a Senate committee or at some defense contractor's gala. Victor's hand tightened on the edge of the blanket. You dosed me, he said, on purpose, without telling anyone, without telling me. Vic, she said, stepping closer, you were not going to stop. You have not stopped in 20 years. It was destroying you. She reached for his hand. He pulled it away. The motion cost him. His shoulders sagged. He took a breath through his teeth. Mara saw his fingers. The yellow at the base of the nails. The same sheen as the vial translated into flesh. What is in it? Shaw asked. Softly. Do you even know? Evelyn looked back at the vial in Lang's hand. For a moment, something like honesty flickered through her expression. It is controlled, she said, measured. They said it would mimic stress failure, make it look like your body simply could not keep up. No one would blame anyone, no one would look too hard. Silence filled the space between each word. Lang's face had gone pale. You are admitting, she said, to bringing a biochemical agent into my hospital to induce organ failure in your husband, disguising it as natural disease and tampering with his clinical picture in the middle of a crisis. Evelyn's chin lifted. You mismanaged him, she said. You ran around like headless birds while his organs shut down. Someone had to take control. Scarjaw stepped fully into the doorway now. His hand rested on the radio at his shoulder, but his eyes were on Lang. Doctor, he said quietly. At this point, I am going to need to call CPD. This is beyond internal policy. Lang did not answer right away. Her attention was fixed on the vial. She held it just far enough from her body that it did not touch her coat. Her fingers were very careful on the glass. "Yes," she said finally, "you are." Evelyn's gaze flicked to the open doorway to the halls beyond. A thin line of sweat shone at her hairline. "No," she said. Her hand moved before anyone could stop it. She snatched the vial from Lang's grip, the motion so abrupt it knocked the doctor's hand aside. The glass caught the edge of the door as she yanked it back. It slipped. For a second, the vial hung in the air. Then it hit the tile. The crack of breaking glass was small, but it sounded enormous in the tight room. Clear shards jumped. Liquid splashed out, spreading in a thin, shining sheet across the floor. A sharp metallic odor rushed up, cutting through the usual smells of coffee and stale air. It burned at the back of the throat and stung the eyes. Back, Scarjaw barked. "Everyone back now?" He grabbed Evelyn by the forearm and dragged her away from the spreading puddle. The younger guard seized her other arm. Together they pulled her clear as she struggled. "Let go of me," she shouted. "You do not even know what it is. You do not know anything." Mara was already moving. The smell slammed into her senses and yanked her backward in time. Canvas walls, sand, a crate of shells broken in the wrong place, a spill kit that had not arrived yet. Here there was no sand. There was a shelf of supplies just inside the holding room door. She lunged toward it, cuffs clinking. Scarjaw cursed, thinking she was trying to run, then realized what she was reaching for. "Stay clear," he warned. "I know what I'm doing," she said. Plastic-wrapped towels, absorbent pads, a bright yellow tub labeled Spill Kit sat on the bottom shelf. She hooked it with her foot, dragged it toward her, and flipped the lid with the backs of her hands. Inside, powdered absorbent and neutralizing agent waited in sealed packets. Her wrists throbbed against the metal, but her fingers were steady as she tore one open with her teeth and shook the contents over the wet floor. "Work from the outside in," she said. "Do not let it spread." White dust rained down on the clear liquid. Where it fell, the fluid clumped and turned cloudy. The metallic smell dulled slightly. Shaw grabbed a towel and dropped to his knees beside her, careful to keep out of the fumes. He pushed the powder into the edges of the puddle with the cloth corralling it. Across the room, Lang yanked a mask from a wall box and pressed it over her mouth and nose. "Get everyone who does not need to be here out of this office," she ordered, "now." The younger guard hustled the headphone-wearing tech into the hall. Other staff who had come to gawk at the sight of Victor Hale in their office retreated quickly. Only Victor on his stretcher remained near the doorway, watching through the gap. His fingers clutched the blanket tighter. Mara held her breath as she worked. The powder mixed with more of the liquid, thickening it into a paste that no longer slid across the tile. Her eyes watered, but she blinked the sting away. She had been in worse clouds. She was not going to leave this one for someone else to handle. After a minute, the shine on the floor was gone. In its place was a damp, grainy mass. She sat back on her heels, lungs burning. "Bag it," she said hoarsely. Scarjaw, now wearing gloves and a mask, crouched closer with an evidence sack. Using a second towel, he scooped the clump mixture and the shards of glass into the bag, then sealed it with a practiced twist. The smell in the room faded to a faint metallic ghost. Nobody moved for a few seconds. Then Lang straightened. Her gaze went to Evelyn standing between the two guards' wrists, now cuffed in front of her. The diamonds at her ears looked strangely bright against the institutional steel. "Evelyn Hale," Lang said. "You are not to leave this building until the police have spoken with you. You are now part of an active investigation into attempted homicide and contamination of a medical facility." Evelyn's chin lifted. "I will call my attorney," she said. "You will," Lang said, from a room with cameras. Victor closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. His voice was softer when he spoke. "Take her," he said to the guards. They tightened their grips. As they began to lead Evelyn away, she twisted to look back at Mara. All the polish was gone now. Her face was raw, stripped of the careful layers. "You think this makes you a hero," she said. "It does not. You are a tool who got lucky. That is all." Mara met her gaze. "I think," she said quietly, "that he is still breathing." Evelyn's mouth twisted. She did not answer. The guards walked her out. The hallway swallowed the sound of her heels. The security office felt different once Evelyn was gone. The loudest noise was the crinkle of the evidence bag in Scarjaw's hands as he set it carefully on the table. The broken vial and its clotted contents made a soft, wet sound as they settled. Lang stripped off her mask and tossed it into a bin. The lines around her mouth looked deeper now. She rubbed the bridge of her nose, then straightened. "CPD is on their way," she said to no one in particular. "No one touches that bag. No one alters any chart related to Hale's admission. Every camera angle from this floor to the VIP suite gets pulled and archived." The younger guard nodded, already reaching for the console to flag the relevant feeds. Victor lay quietly on the stretcher, the nasal cannula hissing softly at his nose. He had not taken his eyes off the evidence bag. Shaw stood near the wall. His arms folded the front of his scrub top, dusted with a few pale grains from the spill kit. He looked tired in a way that went beyond lack of sleep. Mara remained on the bench in the holding room, cuffs still on the smell of neutralized chemical lingering faintly in her hair and clothes. Her throat burned, but her breathing stayed even. Her gaze drifted to her wrists. The skin beneath the metal had gone from red to an angry pink. When she flexed her fingers, the bands bit against her. She thought again of the red line on the ampule that still lay somewhere in an upstairs waste bin, 2 different circles marking the same night. Scarjaw finished logging the evidence and turned toward Lang. "You wanted an officer on Dr. Klein too," he said. Lang nodded. "We are not accusing him of anything yet," she said, "but until we know how much he knew and when he does not go near any lines unsupervised." Shaw cleared his throat. "He was about to inject something unlabeled," he said. "At minimum, he was sloppy." "At minimum," Lang agreed. A phone on the desk rang. The younger guard answered, listened, then covered the receiver. "Doctor," he said to Lang. "Front entrance. CPD just arrived. They are asking for you and for Mr. Hale." Lang glanced at Victor. "You are not going anywhere except ICU," she said. "I will handle the police. They will want your statement eventually, but not before you are under proper monitoring again." Victor shook his head slightly. "I am monitored in 4 different countries on an average Tuesday," he said. "They can speak to me here." Lang pressed her lips together. "I'm not going to argue with a man on a stretcher in front of my own staff," she said. "Not tonight." She looked at Scarjaw. "Keep him here," she said. "Limit anyone else's access until the police finish their initial questions." Scarjaw nodded once. Lang smoothed her blouse, picked an invisible piece of lint from her sleeve, and walked out of the office. Her heels clicked in a controlled, even rhythm. When she was gone, the space seemed to loosen. The tension in the air had somewhere to go. Victor shifted his attention back to Mara. "Get those off her," he said. Scarjaw blinked. "Sir," he asked. "The cuffs," Victor said. "She is not under arrest. She can barely stand up without falling over, and she just mopped up a chemical spill in my security office with her hands bound. Take them off." Scarjaw glanced toward the doorway that Lang had just exited, then back at Victor. "Chief Lang ordered restraint pending investigation," he said. "And I am revising that order," Victor said. "Until CPD arrives, this is still my building. You want to argue property law with me? Go ahead." A flicker of something that might have been amusement passed over Scarjaw's face. He shook his head once and stepped into the holding room. "Wrists," he said. Mara lifted them without a word. The metal opened with 2 clean clicks. The weight left her skin so suddenly that her hands felt oddly light. The blood returned in a hot rush, making the red bands stand out brighter. She did not rub at them. She let her hands fall to her lap. "Thank you," she said. Scarjaw shrugged. "Rules change fast around here," he said. "Might as well keep up." He pocketed the cuffs and moved back toward the door as if nothing had happened. Shaw stepped closer to Mara, taking in the marks. "They will bruise," he said. "They will heal," she answered. Victor shifted on the stretcher again, testing his own body. He winced as something tugged in his side. "I want to be very clear about something," he said, his voice carrying easily into the holding room. "I do not fully understand what you put into my vein upstairs, Ms. Cole." He paused. "But I am very clear on the moment things changed." My head came back. My chest stopped feeling like there was wet cement in it. "I heard you telling someone not to push something else. Then I heard you in cuffs." Mara met his eyes. They were less clouded now. Lines of age and strain showed at the edges. "You are alive," she said simply. He huffed a short breath that might have been a laugh. "For the moment," he said, "I find I like the feeling." He glanced at Shaw. "You knew about that compound," he said. "You tried to talk her out of it." "I tried," Shaw said. "I did not try very hard." Victor's mouth pulled into a thin line that could almost be called a smile. "Remind me to keep you close and documented," he said. "So, if anyone asks later, I can say I had one doctor with common sense." Shaw shook his head. "I do not think common sense is the word Lang will use," he said. Victor's gaze returned to Mara. "You have military training," he said. "Field medic." It was not a question. "Yes," she said. Where he asked. "Afghanistan," she said, "mostly." He considered that. "How many people did you pull back when someone said it was already over?" he asked. She let the question sit for a moment. Faces flickered through her mind, some sharp, some blur, some still, some moving. "Enough to know it does not always work," she said. "Enough to know when you do not try, you remember that longer." His eyes held hers. "I do not like owing people," he said. "It complicates things. People expect favors, positions, handouts. I have spent most of my life learning how to avoid that." She said nothing. "But I owe you," he went on. "Whether Lang's committees decide it was proper or not, whether the lawyers write emails in all caps or not, that does not change. You are the reason I am talking at all." Her instinct was to downplay it, to deflect, to say it had been a team. Instead, she stayed quiet, let him put the words where he wanted to. In the outer office, the younger guard pulled up a new camera angle and froze the frame. The screen showed a still shot of the VIP suite from half an hour ago. Mara at the bed climbed with the syringe, Evelyn at the rail. The ampule in Mara's hand was a blur of gray. Evidence, not story. CPD is in the lobby, the younger guard called out. They are riding the elevator now. Scarjaw acknowledged with a nod. Mr. Hale, he said the officers are going to want to ask you some questions. We can keep Ms. Cole here or move her to the side room if you do not want them to feel like they are walking into a circus. Victor shook his head. She stays, he said. She is now a primary witness. They should see that. Scarjaw accepted that without comment. He checked his radio, adjusted the collar of his uniform, and moved toward the door to meet the officers. For a moment, the office quieted again. The monitors hummed. Somewhere else in the building, a code alarm chirped and then cut off. Life in St. Augustine continued its complicated dance. Mara eased her shoulders back against the cool wall of the holding room. Without the cuffs, she could feel the ache in her muscles more clearly. The adrenaline that had carried her through the last hour was almost gone. In its place was a bone-deep fatigue and a small, steady core of resolve. Victor watched her. You stayed when they told you to leave, he said. You broke rules they wrote for their protection, not yours. You saw something they did not want to see. He turned his head to look at the bank of security monitors. Camera feeds from hallways, lobbies, parking garages, stairwells filled the screens. Each was its own small story. This building is full of lines no one follows as carefully as they claim, he said. Security protocols, vetting procedures, firewall policies. I pay for systems that look clean from the outside. Tonight I saw what leaks really look like. His attention shifted back to her. I have teams for this, he said. Consultants, former federal people, data analysts. They talk in acronyms and send me padded reports. He paused, considering his next words. You saw a pattern in 20 minutes that they have not flagged in 2 years, he said. You walked into a room everyone else was treating like a stage and saw the trap under the lights. Mara drew a slow breath. I saw a patient who was not matching his chart, she said. That is my job. He studied her for a moment longer. Maybe it is, he said. Maybe it can be more. The sound of the approaching elevator drifted down the hall. A chime, doors opening, new footsteps. Victor's hand tightened slightly on the blanket. The effort made lines of discomfort appear around his eyes, but his voice stayed steady. Mara Coley, he said, saying her name like he was reading it off a contract he had just signed. Hale Dynamics has a lot more than ventilators and morphine to worry about. There are gaps here. In my company, in this hospital, in the people I trust. He held her gaze. Would you ever consider working for me? He asked, in a capacity that does not involve linens and float shifts. The question settled in the room like a third presence. Shaw's eyes flicked between them. The guard at the monitors pretended not to listen. The air seemed to thin again, not from lack of oxygen, but from attention. Mara opened her mouth. She had not slept since the previous morning. Her wrists hurt. Her throat burned from chemical fumes. The night had cracked open the neat shell she had built around her history and spilled it into a place she could not easily take it back from. She thought of the glass tower above them, the floors filled with people who pretended not to see what did not fit the story. She thought of the red bands on her skin, the line on the ampule, the line she had stepped over in the VIP room, and again in the security office. Her answer rose, shaped itself, and moved toward her tongue. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.